Hi, I am Kishan Navaratne, co-founder of the Colombo Selenium Meetup, visiting lecturer at University of Moratuwa and guest lecturer at University of Colombo. Today, what we are going to discuss is the concept of test-driven development. So I'm going to take a simple example. Let's take the leap year scenario. Now, in this scenario, for you to calculate whether a year is a valid leap year or not, okay, so if a year is divisible by 4 and if it's not divisible by 100 and also if it's divisible by 400, it can be considered as a valid leap year. So let's take this example. Let's take year 2001. So it's not divisible by 4, because of that it's going to be a typical common year. And if you take year 1996 and 2016, it's going to be a valid leap year. The same way, if you take year 1900, it's divisible by 100. Because of that, it's going to be a atypical common year. And if you take year 2000, it's going to be a atypical leap year. Now, for us to do this, what we are going to do is we are going to create a new Maven project. So I'm going to use IntelliJ IDEA and I'm going to select Maven. I'm going to give the group ID and the artifact ID. So I'm going to give the group ID as UOM CSC.workshop and the artifact ID as TDD test. And you need to select the location where you're going to save this project. So I'm going to create a new directory for that called test-driven development TDD. Right, so you click on the finish button. So when you create a new Maven project, you will get this pom.xml file. Now for us to work on test-driven development, I need to have a unit test framework. So as our unit test framework, what I'm going to do is I'm going to install test-ng. So I have included dependencies tag, and inside that I'm going to bring the test-ng dependency. Right, so if you are working with IntelliJ IDEA, you click on enable auto imports, then the test-ng libraries will come into your local M2 directory. So what I'm going to do now is I need to create a Java class. So I'm going to create a new package called leap year. And I'm going to create a new Java class called leap year checker. Next, what I have to do is I need to generate a test class. So in test-driven development, the approach is first you are going to start with a test, and your test will fail because you haven't implemented the logic. And next you try to implement the logic and you try to pass your test. So in IntelliJ IDEA, you can generate a test class by pressing Ctrl Alt Shift. Control Shift and T, and then you will get the option to generate a test class, and you click on OK. So here I have included the setup method and the tear down. Now what I want is I need to have a test method to satisfy my first data set. So you can right click, you can go to generate, and you can create your test method. Select the option test method. Okay, so my first data set is going to be year 2001. So if 2001 is not going to be a valid leap year, so I'm going to give the method name as when year 2001 is given, checker should validate it is not a leap year, because 2001 is not a valid leap year. So that is going to be my method name. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do an assertion. So I'm going to create a leap year checker. I'm going to initiate it, and then I'm going to create an object of leap year checker class. A new leap year checker. So this is where I should have my main logic, but up to now I haven't implemented the logic. And in my after method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it as now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a basic test-ng assertion. And I'm going to say assert equals. So I'm going to compare two things. I'm going to compare with the actual value and the expected value. So actual value should come from the leap year checker class. So I'm going to say leap year checker is valid. I hope there is a method called is valid. That should be my logic, and I'm going to give the year as 2001. And my expectation is if I give 2001, it should return false, because it's not a valid leap year. Okay, so you will see that is valid. Since I haven't implemented it, it will be highlighted in red color. So if I run this program, my program shouldn't compile. So let's run this and see. Yes, so you will get an error. Now, as I told you earlier, in test-driven development, you start with the smallest test, and you will see that symbol method is valid int here is not implemented. Now I have written the test to satisfy my first data set, but I don't have a logic to validate it. So next what I should do is I need to make my unit test pass. So what I'm going to do is here, as I told you earlier, so your test will fail. Now my next objective is I need to make it pass. So I'm going to implement the logic. I'm going to the leap year checker class, and I'm going to create a method called public, and here the return type should be boolean because I'm expecting whether it's true or false, and I'm going to give the method name as is valid year, and the parameter is going to be a int, and I'm going to give it as year. And my return, I will say it as false, because 2001 is going to return you false. And if you run this program, let's see what will happen to my test. Now you will see that my tests have passed. So I have run one test, failures are 0 and skip tests are 0. Okay, so I have obtained my objective. Earlier it failed, now my unit test is passing. So let's check the second data set. So the second data set is going to be year 1996 is going to be a typical leap year because it's divisible by 4. So I'm going to take a copy of this method and I'm going to paste it and I'm going to change the values. So when year 1996 is given, checker should validate. And this time the expectation is not false because it's going to be true, and I need to correct the method name. So when here 1996 is given, checker should validate it is a leap year. Right? So now I have two test methods, and if I run this program, let's see what will happen. So the results will show you that I have executed two tests and there is one fail, skip 0. So let's go to the failure test. Okay, the second test have failed. Now here I'm actually expecting true, but what I have got is false. So which means when I give year 1996, I'm expecting true, but the program has given me false. So which means there is an error in my logic. So I need to go and refactor my logic. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if year is equal to 1996, then it should return me true. For any other value, it should return false. So that's the basic thing that I can do. Okay, so I have refactored my logic. So let's go back again to my unit test, and I have two tests here, and now I'm going to run it. Now when I run the program, you will see that I am able to execute both the tests and both the tests are passing. So I'm going to take the third data set. Third data set is going to be year 2016 is going to be a typical leap year. I'm going to create a method. I'm going to take a copy of my previous method and I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to change the values. So when year 2016 is given, checker should validate it as a leap year, and I'm going to give the variable as 2060 and I'm expecting the value as true. So now I have three test methods, and if I run this program, let's observe the output. Okay, so here you will see that I have executed three tests, and out of that one has failed, none has skipped. If I go to the failure test, you will notice that the last test has failed. So year 2016 I'm expecting true, but the program has returned me false, which means there is an error in my logic. So I need to go and refactor this method is valid here. Okay, now if you go to the logic, so what it says, if you want to calculate a leap year, it should be divisible by 4. So let's try to implement that logic in my program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if year is divisible by 4, okay, it will not return anything, 0, it will return true. For any other value, it will return false. So let's run this program and see what will happen to the output. Earlier I had 3 tests. Okay, so now all my tests are passing. I have executed 3 tests and all of them are successfully passing. Let's take the 4th data set. If year 1900 is an atypical common year, because so I'm going to take a copy of this method and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to change the values. So it's, year is 1900, it's not a leap year, and when I give year 1900, I'm expecting it should return me false. Okay, so now in my program I have 4 test methods. So let's see what will happen when I execute the program. You will see that out of the 4, 1 has failed. So if I go to the failure test method, here I am actually expecting false, but it has returned me true. So now I need to change my logic. Now when you calculate a leap year, so leap year should be divisible by 4 and it cannot be divisible by 100. So that's the logic. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say if year is divisible by 100, it should return false. And I'm going to run my test again. So I had 4 tests and out of that 1 failed in my previous run. So let's run this program and check the output. Yes, still one of my tests is failing. So I'm expecting false, but still it returns me true. So I think I have given the condition in a wrong position. So it should come before it checks whether the year is divisible by 4. Right. I did a small change in my program. I refactored my logic and now I'm going to rerun it again. Now you will observe that I had 4 tests and all of them are passing. Now let's take the last data set. Year 2000 is going to be a atypical leap year. And I'm going to add a new test method. So when year 2000 is given, checker should validate it is a leap year. And I'm going to give year 2000 and I'm expecting here it will return true. If I run this program, I have 5 test methods. So let's check the output of this program. You will see that out of the 5, 1 has failed. So if I go to the failure test method, I am actually expecting true, but it has returned me false, which means there is an error in my logic. Now year 2000 is an atypical year. So it's divided by 100, so that's why you will get it false. But there's another condition. If a year is divisible by 400, it's going to be a atypical leap year. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say year 400 and it will return true. And now if I run the program, let's observe the output. I am able to pass all my tests. Earlier I had 5 tests, and out of all 5 tests, all of them are passing successfully. So these are the data set that I needed to validate whether a year is a valid leap year or not. Now next, what we have to do is we need to check our code, whether we can refactor our logic. So I have here 3 if statements. So rather than that, I can optimize my code. So what I'm going to do is I will improve my logic here rather than having 3 if statements. So I need to check whether the year is divisible by 4, whether the year is not divisible by 100, and whether the year is divisible by 400. So I have optimized my code as follows. Now I need to run my unit test. I have 5 test methods. I need to run them and see whether my tests are passing or whether they are failing. Okay, so successfully all my 5 tests are passing. So the logic that I have done, the refactoring thing in my logic, it has no impact on the test cases. Next, I need to look at the test and whether I can refactor my test. So if you observe this test, you will see that in each test method, assert equals is repetitive. So what I can do is I can generate a test method, and I'm going to call that method as is valid leap year. Now rather than having 5 test methods, if I can have 1 test method, and if I can parameterize these data values, so I'm going to have assert equals, and I'm going to parameterize the year and the expected value. So I'm going to say int year and boolean value. So it's going to be year, and I'm going to give this as the value. Next, what I want to do is I need to have a data provider. In TestNG, you can parameterize it using the data provider. So I'm going to create a public object. Going to be a 2-dimensional object array, and I'm going to give the method name as getData, and it will return new object and next what I have to give is I have to give the data values. So my first value is 2001, it's not a valid leap year. The next one is year 1996, is a valid leap year, so it will be returned true. Then year 2016 is going to be a valid leap year, so it will return true. And year 1900 is a special condition, so it's not a valid leap year, it will return false. And my final data set is going to be year 2000, which is divisible by 400, so it will return true. So these are the 5 data values that I need to parameterize. And if I run this test, it will fail because it does not know from which method it should take the value, so it doesn't have a connection. So now you have to say data provider is equal to, you need to tell the method. So my method name is getData, And now if you run this program, it knows that it should take the data set from this method called getData. And you will see that I have executed 5 tests and all of them are passing successfully. Now what I can do is I can clear the code. And now if you have a look at my test method, you will see that I have a single test method and I have parameterized it for 5 data sets, and I have a clear logic, I have an optimized logic, and also I have a clear test. Yeah, so this, I hope you were able to get the concept of test driven development. So you start with the test, you start with the smallest test, unit test, and then you try to implement the logic and you try to make it pass, and then you refactor the code, and this circle will repeat. So stay tuned with us for more videos, and you will be able to learn more technologies related to quality assurance.